But we begin with breaking news in Atlanta, where a Georgia appeals court has just stripped Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis from the 2020 election interference case against Donald Trump in that state. Let's bring in Greg Bluestein from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and former Assistant Manhattan District Attorney Catherine Christian. So, Greg, this filing just came down. It's some 30-plus pages. Walk us through what we know.
Yeah, we're still going through the filing, but we know this completely upends what's expected to be the last criminal case pending against the former president. Remember, this case is still ongoing. District Attorney Fani Willis had that very high-profile questions about whether there was a conflict of interest involving former Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade. Well, this court ruled that there is an apparent conflict of interest that merits her dismissal from the case. I'll read you one quote. While we recognize that an appearance of impropriety generally is not enough to support disqualification, this is the rare case in which disqualification is mandated and no other remedy will suffice to restore public confidence in the integrity of these proceedings. So this can still be appealed to the Georgia Supreme Court. It is expected to be appealed to the Georgia Supreme Court, but this is a really decisive ruling against Fani Willis being able to continue this case.
Catherine, what's your reaction? What do you make of this ruling?
It's not shocking. It was shocking when we found out that there was this relationship, and you just said it was an unforced error. But usually appellate courts defer to the lower court, the trial judge, who fashioned a remedy. He said Nathan Wade, that's the man she was having an affair with, had to leave, but the office could stay. And this court has said, nope, they didn't. This court said that Judge McAfee did not really appreciate that her decision-making wasn't just the indictment. It was who to charge, how to charge it. And that's at the time when this alleged romantic relationship was going on. And they said that also was one of the reasons why they think it's more than an appearance of impropriety. It's a conflict of interest. And not just her, the entire office is disqualified. So this is another Trump indictment that sort of will disappear. And yes, they will appeal it, but, you know, Donald Trump's defense team will use the same arguments that they did for the Manhattan DA's office and say he's now going to be president. This should be suspended while he's president because you can't prosecute a sitting president.
So you think this just goes away, that this is the end of this case?
Well, practically, yes. I'm certain, I shouldn't say I'm certain, probably the Fulton County DA will appeal it, but Donald Trump is going to be president. And his lawyers are going to say, you know, he's not going to Fulton County to appear in any case. So if anything's going to happen, you have to wait until 2029 when he's no longer in office. So this effectively is another case that sort of will just, one of the four indictments that will disappear.
One option I am understanding, Greg, is this could end up being handed off to a different office, different prosecutor. Is there any other office or prosecutor in Georgia you think would make sense that would be willing to take this up?
That's such a good question, because there is a prosecuting attorney's council that could ostensibly take up a case like this. But earlier on this year, that same prosecuting attorney's council special prosecutor decided not to pursue similar charges against Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, who Fani Willis was earlier disqualified against seeking charges against because of another conflict of interest, a completely separate conflict of interest. So they've already signaled they're very unlikely to seek any sort of charges against any of these co-defendants. And it's also important to note that the judges, the benches, the appellate court benches in Georgia are very conservative. The Court of Appeals is very conservative, and the Supreme Court, 8 of the 9 justices were appointed by Republican governors. So it's a very conservative bench here in Georgia.
So to be clear, Catherine, this case and this ruling is not just regarding the charges against Trump. This is a RICO case. We know there were multiple defendants or co-defendants. What happens as far as those co-defendants?
All of the defendants, because of clearly if Donald Trump was affected by this conflict of interest, so were all of his co-defendants. It's not fair that they have to proceed, but Donald Trump gets off, meaning his case gets dismissed. So all of, and I believe there are 15 remaining defendants.
What about the people who took plea deals? The people who pled guilty will
probably argue that their plea should be withdrawn. That will be a whole other, proceeding. It could be argued that, no, their plea was knowing, involuntary, and intelligent, but they will argue the same conflict existed for us, and we would have never pled guilty if we knew about it. So this will be continued at least to those 4 defendants and them trying to get their pleas back.
And, Greg, where does this leave Fani Willis?
Yeah, well, she just won re-election, so she does have another 4 years in office. There was a Republican challenger who tried to make this case a big part of her argument that Fani Willis should be unseated, Fulton County is one of the biggest Democratic strongholds in Georgia, so there was no surprise that Fani Willis won re-election. But her reputation is damaged, right? This was an unforced error, as we said earlier, and this was all of her own doing, and now it unravels, or it might unravel, one of the signature cases, not just of her career, but in Georgia. So it leaves her damaged, and it'll be interesting to see what case she tries to make when she is expected to appeal this to the Georgia Supreme Court.